You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Implementation is the disciplined stage where approved improvements move from intent into reality. It is not enough to plan or design changes. Execution requires precision, accountability, and safeguards so that results are reliable and verifiable. The orientation here emphasizes that improvements should be implemented as small, reversible steps with clear ownership and telemetry. This approach protects the system from large, disruptive shifts while accelerating learning. Implementation is where ideas are tested against reality, where risks are managed proactively, and where verification distinguishes genuine progress from wishful thinking. Done well, execution builds trust across stakeholders, as improvements are delivered safely and transparently. Done poorly, it erodes credibility, producing churn and rework. Implementation bridges vision and outcome by ensuring that every change is concrete, accountable, and sustainable, turning aspirations into durable practice that strengthens delivery systems over time. Action definition ensures that each improvement is framed with clarity before execution begins. A well-defined action states the specific change, the problem it addresses, the expected signals of success, and the observation window for evaluation. For example, an action might be defined as reduce test queue aging by introducing WIP limits, with success measured by a 20% decrease in average wait time over 4 weeks. This precision prevents ambiguity during rollout and creates shared understanding among stakeholders. It also provides the basis for verification, as success signals and timing are clear. Without definition, actions risk being vague aspirations, open to misinterpretation and scope drift. By explicitly defining actions, organizations ensure that improvement steps are unambiguous, testable, and accountable. This discipline turns intentions into operational experiments with clear goals, ensuring that execution remains focused and evidence-driven. Ownership and decision rights make accountability visible during implementation. Every action should have a directly responsible individual, supported by clearly defined roles for partners and escalation paths. Ownership ensures that someone is accountable for progress, while decision rights clarify who can adapt scope, pause, or reverse when conditions shift. For example, a release engineer may own the stabilization of a deployment pipeline, with supporting roles from developers and operations. Escalation paths ensure momentum is not lost when obstacles arise. This clarity prevents confusion and delays, which often occur when responsibility is diffuse. By naming owners and defining decision rights, organizations embed accountability into execution. It reassures stakeholders that someone is guiding the change, and that authority for adjustments is explicit. Ownership transforms improvement from collective aspiration into accountable delivery. Scope and boundaries protect implementation from uncontrolled expansion. By defining what is in scope for this iteration and what is not, teams maintain focus and prevent distraction. For example, if the scope is to simplify approval steps for low-risk changes, boundaries might explicitly exclude redesigning the entire compliance framework. Scope clarity ensures that work is achievable within the observation window and cadence. It also prevents scope creep, where good intentions balloon into unmanageable efforts. Boundaries provide psychological safety, signaling that improvements will proceed in manageable increments. By limiting scope, organizations preserve both pace and precision. Scope definition transforms implementation into a series of focused steps rather than sprawling, vague projects. It ensures that progress is visible and verifiable, building confidence and sustaining momentum. Preconditions and readiness checks confirm that all necessary conditions for execution are in place before change begins. These include verifying environments, data availability, approvals, and dependencies. For example, before introducing a new monitoring hook, teams must ensure that test environments are stable, identifiers are available, and data handling complies with privacy rules. Readiness prevents costly midstream delays or failures caused by missing prerequisites. It also increases the likelihood that results reflect the change itself rather than confounding factors. Preconditions create a known good baseline, ensuring that experiments start from a stable foundation. This discipline reduces noise, improves interpretability, and protects credibility. By embedding readiness checks, organizations make implementations smoother, faster, and more reliable. It ensures that execution is not rushed into chaos, but grounded in preparation that supports valid learning. Risk assessment and guardrails ensure that changes are paired with proportionate controls. Every improvement carries potential failure modes, and these must be identified and managed before work begins. For example, implementing tighter WIP limits may risk starving urgent work, so guardrails might include stop-loss criteria and escalation paths. Risk assessment clarifies the blast radius of a change, while guardrails limit damage if signals move adversely. This preparation builds confidence, reassuring stakeholders that implementation is disciplined, not reckless. Guardrails also normalize reversibility, making rollback routine rather than shameful. By assessing risks and embedding controls, organizations reduce fear and encourage experimentation. Risk awareness transforms improvement into a safe, repeatable practice. It ensures that execution produces learning even when outcomes are unexpected, protecting both systems and culture. Small batch design breaks improvements into thin, independently shippable steps. Instead of rolling out sweeping reforms, teams deliver changes in increments that can be tested and verified quickly. For example, a new policy might be trialed in one department before extending organization-wide. Small batches accelerate feedback, reduce rollback cost, and improve attribution. They also protect stability, as side effects are contained. This practice mirrors the principle of small releases in delivery. Progress is more reliable when made in narrow slices. Small batch design makes implementation iterative, ensuring that even large changes are composed of safe-to-try steps. It turns improvement into a continuous cycle of learning and adjustment, building trust and momentum. By designing thin increments, organizations increase agility and resilience in execution. Pilot selection and cohort definition provide a way to validate improvements in limited, representative contexts. Rather than exposing the entire system to change at once, a pilot tests effectiveness and risks with a smaller group. For example, a usability change might be piloted with a regional customer cohort or a subset of staff. Cohort selection ensures diversity, capturing insights that generalize. Pilots contain downside by limiting exposure while still producing meaningful feedback. They also generate confidence for broader rollout as results are validated under real conditions. Pilot strategies demonstrate humility, acknowledging uncertainty and testing before scaling. They transform implementation into a measured process of expansion rather than a single gamble. By embedding pilots, organizations reduce risk and increase learning, ensuring improvements take root responsibly. Rollback and stop-loss criteria define the conditions under which changes will be reversed, along with the steps and communication needed. By planning reversals up front, organizations make them routine and blame-free. For example, a stop-loss rule might state, if error rates exceed 5% after rollout, roll back within 1 hour. This clarity reduces hesitation when things go wrong, ensuring swift recovery. Rollback criteria also protect morale, showing that reversals are part of disciplined practice, not personal failure. Stop-loss planning prevents escalation of commitment, where flawed changes persist because teams are reluctant to admit issues. By embedding rollback into implementation, organizations build resilience. They normalize experimentation, as everyone knows recovery paths are safe and rehearsed. Rollback and stop-loss criteria make execution both bold and careful. A communication plan aligns affected audiences by explaining purpose, timing, and expected impact. Without clear communication, even good changes can be resisted or misunderstood. Plans should specify audiences, such as practitioners, sponsors, or customers, and tailor messages accordingly. For example, engineers may receive detailed technical notes, while executives see a plain summary of outcomes and risks. Communication also sets expectations for trade-offs, such as temporary slowdowns during rollout. This transparency preserves trust and secures cooperation. By planning communication, organizations prevent rumor cycles and align stakeholders on objectives. It also demonstrates respect for those impacted, acknowledging their need for clarity. A strong communication plan ensures that implementation is not just operational but social, smoothing adoption by making everyone part of the journey. Training and enablement prepare practitioners to execute changes correctly on day one. Improvements require behavior change, and without support, adoption falters. Concise playbooks, checklists, and practice repetitions equip teams to apply new processes confidently. For example, if a new incident escalation pathway is introduced, staff should rehearse scenarios before it goes live. Enablement makes change feasible, reducing errors and frustration. It also signals investment in people, reinforcing that success is shared. Training bridges the gap between policy and practice, ensuring improvements are not just announced but enacted. By embedding enablement, organizations turn implementation into a supported transition rather than an imposed disruption. This practice ensures that improvements stick as practitioners feel capable and confident from the start. Documentation updates ensure that guidance matches the new reality immediately after change. Improvements must be reflected in runbooks, standards, and decision records, or confusion and reversion will occur. For example, if approval chains are simplified, the relevant policies and workflows must be revised. Updating documentation signals closure. The system now operates under new guidance. It also prevents reliance on memory, which is fragile and inconsistent. Documentation provides continuity for future staff, embedding improvements into organizational memory. By aligning guidance with reality, organizations ensure that change is not temporary. Documentation updates transform improvements into standards, making them durable. This practice reinforces that implementation is about institutionalizing progress, not just delivering a one-time adjustment. Compliance and evidence hooks embed traceability, approvals, and retention into the workflow. Improvements must be defensible, especially in regulated contexts. By capturing evidence during implementation, organizations avoid bolt-on documentation later. For example, rollout logs, approval signatures, and retention policies can be stored automatically with deployment records. Hooks ensure that compliance is not bypassed in the name of speed. They also reduce rework, as evidence accumulates naturally. By embedding hooks, organizations maintain both agility and accountability. Compliance integration demonstrates maturity. Improvements are fast but also defensible under scrutiny. This practice ensures that implementation builds trust with auditors and stakeholders. It proves that speed and governance can coexist, preserving credibility while sustaining momentum. Schedule and capacity planning integrate improvement actions into normal cadence, avoiding heroics. By placing changes within planned delivery cycles with buffers for verification and rollback, organizations protect stability and pace. For example, introducing new test automation might be scheduled in a sprint with reserved capacity for observation. Planning prevents improvements from becoming late-night emergencies that burn out staff. It also aligns expectations, as stakeholders see when and how changes will occur. Capacity planning ensures that improvements do not displace critical delivery but complement it. This practice makes implementation sustainable, embedding it into rhythm rather than treating it as exceptional. By pacing actions responsibly, organizations ensure that improvements endure rather than collapse under pressure. Success signals and telemetry planning define what events will be captured, what thresholds indicate success, and how dashboards will display results. For example, a pipeline stabilization effort may define success as a reduction in flaky test reruns by 50% within 2 sprints. Telemetry ensures that signals are collected automatically, avoiding reliance on ad hoc analysis. Planning also specifies where results will be visible, ensuring transparency. Success signals transform improvements into accountable bets, validated by evidence. They also accelerate learning, as clear metrics reveal outcomes quickly. By embedding telemetry, organizations build confidence in their execution. Success signals ensure that improvements are judged by impact, not by intent. This discipline closes the loop in implementation, turning actions into measurable progress that can be sustained, scaled, or revised as evidence dictates. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Execution kickoff is the moment where planning gives way to coordinated action. A strong kickoff aligns everyone on objectives, roles, timelines, and contingency plans, eliminating ambiguity at the point of change. For example, a kickoff for a new deployment pipeline might clarify who monitors telemetry, who holds rollback authority, and when check-ins will occur. Kickoffs also review guardrails and stop-loss criteria, ensuring that all participants understand when and how reversals will be triggered if signals go negative. By gathering the right people for a focused alignment, kickoff prevents last-minute confusion and builds confidence. It transforms improvement from isolated tasks into a shared effort. Execution kickoff is less about ceremony and more about clarity. It ensures that when work begins, every contributor knows what success looks like, how risks will be managed, and what their role is in bringing the change to life. Coordination rituals sustain momentum during rollout. Short, decision-focused touchpoints, surface blockers, synchronize tasks, and track progress without overloading participants. For example, a daily 10-minute check-in may confirm whether telemetry thresholds are holding, identify any anomalies, and ensure that dependencies remain unblocked. Unlike traditional status meetings, coordination rituals are tightly scoped to action. They reduce decision latency by providing a forum for immediate adjustments. They also reinforce accountability, as each participant updates the group on their responsibilities. By keeping these rituals light and purposeful, organizations maintain tempo without adding waste. Coordination rituals make implementation adaptive, allowing changes to adjust in real time. They create resilience by ensuring that small issues are resolved quickly before they escalate. This discipline keeps energy high, prevents drift, and ensures that execution progresses smoothly toward its objectives. Progressive exposure allows organizations to scale improvements safely. Instead of releasing a change to all users or systems at once, progressive methods, such as feature flags, canary deployments, or ring rollouts, introduce it in stages. For example, a new monitoring rule may be activated for 5% of traffic, then 50% before reaching full exposure. Early signals provide confidence or trigger rollback with minimal disruption. Progressive exposure builds safety into the rollout, ensuring that if errors emerge, their impact is limited. It also generates valuable learning by observing how changes behave under different load levels or user contexts. This method reinforces that implementation is not about gambling but about managing risk intelligently. Progressive exposure combines prudence with momentum, enabling organizations to move fast while containing downside. It transforms improvement into a deliberate expansion rather than a leap into uncertainty. In-flight monitoring provides the vigilance necessary to catch problems early during execution. Leading indicators, error budgets, and qualitative feedback are continuously watched as changes roll out. For example, monitoring may track latency spikes, defect reports, or unusual support calls within the first hours of exposure. In-flight monitoring enables pauses, rollbacks, or adjustments before issues escalate. It also reassures stakeholders that execution is disciplined and responsive, not blind. Monitoring provides the evidence needed to decide whether to expand, hold, or reverse a change. It transforms rollout into an adaptive process rather than a one-way push. By embedding in-flight monitoring, organizations maintain both agility and control. They demonstrate maturity in balancing speed with safety, ensuring that improvements are validated under live conditions and that risk remains within tolerances. Verification activities compare observed signals against pre-stated thresholds and confidence bands, providing closure on whether the change worked. For example, if a WIP limit was expected to reduce average queue aging by 20%, verification checks whether this threshold was met within the observation window. Verification provides objectivity, preventing optimism or selective interpretation from coloring results. It also determines the next step: expand, adjust, or roll back. Verification builds trust, as stakeholders see that improvements are judged against agreed criteria rather than subjective satisfaction. By completing this loop, organizations confirm whether effort produced real value. Verification transforms implementation from assumption into evidence. It provides accountability and transparency, ensuring that changes are not simply deployed but rigorously evaluated. This discipline cements credibility, proving that improvements are real, not rhetorical. Adoption support ensures that improvements stick, rather than oscillating between old and new behaviors. Even effective changes can fail if users struggle with edge cases, usability issues, or unanswered questions. Adoption support addresses these needs quickly through FAQs, help channels, or dedicated liaisons. For example, if a new process shortens approval steps, support may provide guidance for scenarios where exceptions arise. Quick responses prevent frustration and regression to prior habits. Adoption support demonstrates commitment to users, reinforcing that their success is central to implementation. It also accelerates cultural embedding, as teams build confidence with the new way of working. By investing in adoption, organizations ensure that improvements endure. This practice acknowledges that technical success alone is insufficient. Human adoption is the true measure of whether implementation succeeds. Standardization pathways embed successful improvements into everyday practice. Once validated, changes must be promoted into standards, such as the definition of done, checklists, or golden paths. For example, if a new monitoring hook proves effective, it should be added to all new deployments by default. Standardization ensures that gains persist beyond the individuals who initiated them. It also prevents drift, as future teams adopt improvements automatically. This practice transforms one-time wins into systemic resilience. It builds cumulative progress, where each validated step becomes part of the foundation for future work. Standardization pathways are essential for institutionalizing improvement. They ensure that learning does not evaporate but compounds, embedding resilience into the delivery system. Without this step, gains risk being forgotten, leaving organizations vulnerable to repeating old mistakes. Knowledge capture turns execution into organizational learning. By documenting findings, surprises, and effective tactics, teams create searchable notes and playbooks for future reference. For example, a record may highlight that progressive exposure revealed issues only at 50% load, emphasizing the need for stress testing earlier. Knowledge capture prevents rediscovery, accelerates future improvements, and builds shared memory. It also strengthens onboarding, equipping new members with lessons from past implementations. Capturing knowledge demonstrates humility, acknowledging that improvement is iterative and that even failures produce valuable insight. By making experiences reusable, organizations multiply the value of each action. Knowledge capture ensures that implementation contributes not just immediate outcomes but long-term capability, embedding wisdom into the culture of improvement. Vendor and partner alignment ensures that boundaries are managed consistently during implementation. Many changes depend on external systems or service providers, and coordination is essential. For example, introducing new security protocols may require vendors to update their integrations or provide test environments. Alignment includes updating SLAs, coordinating change windows, and agreeing on evidence exchange. This cooperation ensures that external interfaces reflect the new design and do not create hidden waste or risk. Vendor alignment extends improvement beyond organizational walls, embedding resilience across the ecosystem. It also builds accountability, ensuring that partners share responsibility for outcomes. By coordinating with vendors, organizations reduce surprises and accelerate adoption. This practice acknowledges that modern delivery is collaborative, and improvement must be systemic to be sustainable. Compliance confirmation closes the loop with regulators and auditors by packaging approvals, test results, and retention notes. By compiling this evidence during implementation, organizations avoid end-of-cycle scrambles. For example, documentation may include decision logs, approval records, and before and after metrics. Compliance confirmation demonstrates that improvements are not only fast, but defensible. It reassures stakeholders that rigor was preserved alongside speed. This practice protects credibility and reduces audit stress. It also reinforces the culture of transparency, showing that accountability is embedded in delivery, not tacked on afterward. Compliance confirmation ensures that improvements meet both operational and regulatory standards, sustaining trust across all audiences. It transforms compliance from a burden into a natural byproduct of disciplined execution. Deprecation and cleanup remove temporary scaffolding once improvements stabilize. During implementation, teams may use toggles, stubs, or parallel processes to manage risk. These must be retired to avoid long-term complexity. For example, a feature flag should be removed once the change is fully adopted, or a manual workaround retired once automation is stable. Cleanup preserves simplicity and prevents technical debt. It also reinforces discipline, showing that improvements are not complete until the system is streamlined. By embedding cleanup, organizations prevent the fossilization of temporary measures into permanent clutter. This practice protects sustainability and ensures that progress does not create new waste. Deprecation and cleanup close the improvement loop by restoring clarity and coherence to the system. Sustainability checks review whether implementation created new burdens or risks. These checks examine load on teams, on-call impact, and potential change fatigue. For example, if a rapid series of rollouts strains staff capacity, sustainability reviews may adjust pacing. They also monitor whether improvements introduced hidden maintenance costs. By pacing changes responsibly, organizations protect long-term energy and engagement. Sustainability checks reinforce that improvement must be humane as well as effective. They prevent burnout and ensure that teams remain capable of sustaining the rhythm of iteration. This discipline acknowledges that delivery is powered by people, and their well-being must be protected. Sustainability ensures that improvements strengthen systems without weakening the humans who maintain them. Closure criteria formally complete the action, confirming that outcomes are met, risks reduced, and artifacts updated. Too often, improvements remain almost done, with incomplete documentation, unresolved adoption gaps, or lingering scaffolding. Closure requires explicit review. Did success signals confirm the intended effect? Were standards, runbooks, and dashboards updated? Were risks addressed? By enforcing closure, organizations prevent drift and ensure accountability. Closure provides stakeholders with confidence that improvements are not just attempted, but completed. It also provides a clean transition to the next cycle, as unfinished work does not linger. Closure transforms implementation from open-ended activity into disciplined practice. It ensures that progress is real, sustainable, and locked into the system before attention shifts. Renewal triggers record the conditions under which an area should be revisited. Even successful improvements may degrade over time as systems evolve. For example, approval simplifications may work under current demand but require reassessment when scale increases. Renewal triggers define signals, such as rising cycle time or incident recurrence, that indicate the need for a new cycle. By recording these triggers, organizations ensure vigilance continues. Renewal embeds humility, acknowledging that improvement is never final. It ensures that implementation remains dynamic, adjusting as context shifts. Renewal triggers sustain the cycle of continuous improvement, preventing complacency. They demonstrate that progress is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing commitment to adaptation and resilience. Renewal ensures that organizations remain ready to improve again, with clear signals guiding when and where to act. Implementation synthesis emphasizes that reliable execution depends on thin, safeguarded steps carried out with explicit ownership, telemetry, and institutionalization. Each action begins with clear definition, scope, and preconditions, supported by risk guardrails and reversible design. Execution progresses through pilots, progressive exposure, and in-flight monitoring, ensuring safety and learning. Verification, adoption support, and standardization turn results into durable practice, while knowledge capture and vendor alignment extend gains across boundaries. Compliance confirmation and cleanup preserve trust and clarity, while sustainability checks protect human capacity. Closure criteria finalize actions, and renewal triggers keep vigilance alive. Together, these practices ensure that improvements move predictably from plan to reality. Implementation becomes a disciplined bridge between intent and durable outcomes, embedding resilience into both systems and culture. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.